I want to welcome you to our 6th or 7th Startup Grind event. I've known Mark, I've known Mark, how long, Mark? About 5-6 years? Yeah. And during that 5 or 6 years, I've gotten to know him quite well, both as a business person, through Coffee mate. We spend a lot of time drinking coffee and talking. Well, he does all the talking, I do a lot of listening. But he also has gone through some really interesting things in the last couple of years, which I think there's a great learning here. Is that from his corporate world, being in the private sector, being an entrepreneur in his own right, also being involved with angel investing, and then one day he woke up and said he wants to be an author. And you've been saying that for quite a while. It's, yeah, he's going to be an author. Yeah. So, but he is, and he is currently now published as of August 1st, and it's not just one book, and he'll tell you all about it. But it's going to be 4, if not a 5th. What? How many?
6. Yeah.
Give him a weekend, he writes a book. So 6 books plus history, but it's really an interesting journey. And then last time we were together, knowing that he was going to be our guest fireside chat person, we were talking. How do you go from being in the corporate world, private sector, angel investor, to writing the book? He says it's the same thing. Art is just like running a business, and it's very interesting. So that's what we really want to talk about. But before we start, we got something that's very important to you that we do this.
When settlers came down, my books focus on South Texas. And when settlers came down, there's a thing called the Nueces Strip. It's from the Nueces. Here, I'm saying it already.
Just give it away.
Give it away, yeah. The idea was, who can pronounce that word?
Nueces.
Yeah, it's Espanol. For nuts. Yeah, I gave it away.
Well, but see what I did.
So there's a river.
Can I just say something? Because when I said it, it's called Nuches. Nuches, and so I says, hey, and you said that a lot of people have a hard time pronouncing it.
That's right.
So I figured let's throw it out to the huge audience out here and see if they can do it. So it is Nueces, right?
Correct.
Okay.
That's because of the profusion of pecan trees that were along the river. It comes from San Antonio down to Corpus Christi as the Nueces River. It's the northern boundary of what they call the Nueces Strip, or Wild Horse Desert, whatever you prefer, all the way down to the Rio Grande. Anyway.
Is this in pecan trees?
It's a Texas pronunciation, son.
Do they grow alongside the cactus?
There aren't that many cactus. There are, but there's live oak, there's mesquite, there's cypress.
But he's basically, ever since I've known him, he's been wearing cowboy boots. You got him on tonight? There they are.
I got a few pair.
First of all, Mark, though, really is, how can art be like a business? I mean, I know what you told me, but and when you talk about it, there's one thing when you talk about it is that you articulate it a lot better than I can. So.
Okay. So, having spent 25 years in the corporate world, where I actually studied, I was an English major in college, later did an MBA. But, so my first job out of college was writing tech manuals. Makes sense, English major, right? Well, I gravitated into strategic business planning, which also requires a lot of communication and writing and what have you. And of course that wasn't full time, so I got into, you name the writing, whether it's video scripts or press releases or tech, whatever, you learn to adapt and use your writing skills across a broad spectrum. Anyway, so I got into strategic planning, and the planning really paid off. The companies I worked for used the plans that I led teams on, and they did quite well. We had, incredible growth in these companies. And I was a cog in that wheel, leading the planning teams. But I got a little tired of that after a while and realized that being a little corporate mucky muck junior executive in a defense contractor just wasn't a ticket. And I should mind you, about this time I was kind of testing the waters and starting to do a little writing, a little science fiction actually. And I got into entrepreneurship. And I tried my hand at a few different businesses.
Like what? What were some of your businesses?
Oh, I was in senior living for a while. I got involved with some people that had a really neat system for skilled nursing kind of environments, that sort of thing. And it was really made a lot of sense, except they were wed to old marketing principles, and I couldn't get them out of that box. And I finally had to kiss it goodbye. You got to know when to quit, right, Xavier? Yeah. So, probably the most exciting, most fun one I got into actually was the first online private equity marketplace. And it's where entrepreneurs and investors could meet online. And this was the late 1990s. The upside was it was a fabulous system. We spent $1 million developing it. It was a dial-up time. And the internet and Steve
You mean
Case.
the ones you...
Yeah, Steve Case would be the first one to tell you. We really wasn't ready for a lot of really great, So there were a couple of pretenders that competed with us, but mostly it went belly up. And by the tech crash of 2000, April 2000, we were cooked. We even tried to convert it to a portfolio management tool, and it wasn't going to cut it. The beauty was I got all kinds of connectivity. It was a great time of life. On one hand, I lost a lot of money. On the other hand, I got a lot of friends, and I started to get some of it back.
Did you make any money?
No.
Oh, good.
I probably lost $500,000. Okay. So I know the bad side, the downside. I've been there, done that. And by the way, all during this time, I'm still writing on the side. I'm doing little books. I got rejection sheets, letters like, I got a file that thick. I got a shelf of novels that'll never see a publisher. Okay? But I was, it was a little side passion going in between everything else. Married, family, kids getting ready for college. But I got a lot of connectivity. I was investment bankers and the legal community, the business banking community, entrepreneurial organizations, the other angel organizations, what have you. So it was a wonderful experience in that respect. And I then leveraged that locally. About 4 years ago, we founded Mid-Atlantic Angels here locally. And basically, we ultimately, I think at the max, we had about 25 local high net worth individuals that qualified as angel investors. And were willing to risk a few bucks. And we ultimately invested about $1.5 million in 7 ventures. None of whom look like they're going to make it to the big time.
As of today?
As of today.
As of today.
And that's the risk you take because, in that game of the companies that even qualify to get investment, an angel investment, 70% fail. And of the ones that are left, about 2%, you're going to come pretty close to break even. And then that last 1%, that's enough to give you an overall average of about 250% return on your investment. So it's why you don't invest in a single company at a time. You build portfolios. We were really fortunate a couple years ago when Joe Welty and Kendall Camuti helped, and Miles and Stockbridge began hosting the event here. And it probably kind of gave us some new life, but it wasn't going to be enough. There was an aversion to risk that we seem to come upon in the community. And again, that's when you look at it and you go, this is not happening. They're not ready for this yet. Yeah, there's a couple people here and there, but be that as it may. So we closed that shop back in December of last year. And it was probably a little before that I really dove headfirst and full-time doing the writing. I was very fortunate. Shall I continue? Very fortunate to get a publisher. Now, I had self-published. I actually had a teen novel called Jackson's Journey. It was all the teens loved it. I got good feedback and all that kind of stuff. But self-publishing is a loser's game, trust me. to effectively market a book, you better be able to spend $25,000, $30,000, $40,000. You got distribution to worry about. You got marketing to worry about. I mean, it's huge, and you need that infrastructure that only a real publisher can enable. And it gets you in the catalogs and outreach to libraries and bookstores, the vendors, distribution networks, and stuff like that. So the actual writing is, hey, that's great, I love it, but promotion's huge. So I was very fortunate. I had a connection through an organization in Texas, and they put me in touch with this publisher, and one thing led to another, and they offered me a deal. So here I am, working towards royalties, hoping and praying, but the book was released back in the end of July. And there's another one coming out 1st of February, and I've got a commitment for a book every 6 months. And I've got 2 more after this one that's coming out next. I got 2 more in the can, 2 other novels that are on the side, and the 5th one is about 50% there, and there'll be a couple. These are Tumbleweed Sagas. It's a series. The same protagonist works through all the novels, but the times are different time periods and different situations and different bad guys and bad, But it's what you call historical novels in that they're based in real world. And so I've just inserted some fictional characters. They're dealing with real people in real situations. And I describe it pretty graphically in the novels. I mean, what does Comanche do to a captive? Ugh. You don't want to know. But it's how it was. And to ignore that is, I mean, it's kind of interesting when you take a place like Texas, because you discover that the Texans didn't have really great feelings about the Mexicans. They rated the Mexicans somewhere beneath slaves. Okay? And it was all resentment over disputed territory, and they were doing bad things to each other, but it was, in the mid-1800s up through the 1880s, 1890s, you'd be riding along a trail and you'd see 3 Mexicans hanging from a tree, and it wasn't by their hands. So anyway, so you get to this point and you say, okay, wow, that's great. I have a business plan. I have a marketing plan. My publisher is part of my marketing plan, all right? And all the traditional stuff you see in a business, in an entrepreneurial effort, well, I've been there, done that anyway. But, I mean, I've probably reviewed, analyzed 1,000 business plans easy in my sordid life. And so you know what you're looking for and what you need to do. And I'll tell you, without it, it's what keeps you honed in on what you need to do. And what's particularly interesting in writing a fiction, a novel, is you become the character, the product, effectively.
You're Captain Bob, whatever.
Be that as it may. So that's kind of an intro.
So one thing is going through, and then we'll throw it open to the group a little bit here. When I was having coffee with you last time, is the passion. I mean, how do you maintain, as entrepreneurs, as small business owners, we all need to keep passion in our business, I believe. How do you translate that passion for what you've done before? Because I imagine working for a large corporation, doing your angel investors, you're doing your own business. How do you maintain passion?
Passion.
What is passion?
Passion.
Define passion.
Ask my wife.
You really want me to? I'll give her a call. I'll get her out of speakerphone.
Anyway, no, passion is inside you. I used to, when I had a little stint there for about 8 years where I was an adjunct teaching business courses, finance, entrepreneurship, stuff like that at a small college. And one of the things I talked to him about is I'd put up this Venn diagram, okay? What do I like to do that I, do fairly well? And of that, what am I really passionate about? What keeps me up at night thinking about it? And then the third circle is, can I make money at it? Okay? I have on my nightstand a stack of 3x5 cards and a pen. And I'll wake up in the middle of the night with an idea for the book. I sit listening to my pastor's message on Sunday morning, and invariably I'll come out with something, not necessarily religious, but I'll come out with something that he's got me thinking about that I'll work into the book. The passion is just a constant desire to create. I've been asked, do you get writer's block? Not only no, but hell no. If you're really passionate about what you're doing, that doesn't happen. The next, and part of it is the style I've chosen. My wife and I were talking about it today. What differentiates your product? I was talking earlier with a couple of folk about there's 1,000 new titles come out every day. Libraries go nuts. How do you differentiate yourself? So I've taken a style, first place, when my editor reviewed this first Noasis Justice, she says, who's your market? I went, well, a typical market for Western genre. It's a bunch of guys. She says, no, honey, women gonna love this. I went, okay. She's been at it a while. So I thought, okay, that's cool. But then I've got a technique called POV, or point of view. And it enables rapid scene transitions and character transitions within the time frame that you're writing. And I'm not expecting millennials to come out and buy my book, but it is more akin to a video game, frankly. The action goes, it's quick. And it shifts enough that you're not going to get bored with it. At least I don't think so. I haven't had anyone say that. And so basically, I've kind of rewired the Western genre a bit in that respect. In fact, I've got a line that my publisher loves. I said, I baked a Texas pie and I'm offering America a slice. Hey, it's worked. So anyway.
But did you
So
have
the passion-
It was the same passion, though, when you were having in the angel investors and
That's one of the things you look for in an angel investor. But passion's fleeting. How do you sustain that? You're right. How do you sustain that passion? It is constantly evolving your product. I get so excited when I find something new that I can insert in a book. I felt the same way when I had an entrepreneurial business. And I'm sure, Xavier, you probably feel the same way. It's that constant desire to improve the product, to add functionality, to meet some perceived demand. And that kind of, you're adding fuel to the fire. What do you need for a fire? You need heat, oxygen, and fuel. Well, you're pouring the fuel on by, I'm constantly researching Western material. And I find things, I go, holy cow. I was explaining to Joe earlier about anyone else in this room ever hear of tailing? Tailing. It's something cowboys do. Okay? Yeah. It's when a longhorn steer would take off. The SPCA would love this. The longhorn steer would take off from the herd. Maybe the sun caught them the wrong way, or they got bit by something. Who knows? They take off for the brush. Well, a cowboy would take out after them. They had long tails. They'd grab the longhorn by the tail, on a full gallop, wrap it around the saddle horn, and bring it up to a halt. And a longhorn would go thump, maybe knock the wind out of it even. But when that longhorn got up, it'd forget about whatever spooked it. and it'd go docilely back to the herd. It was called tailing. In fact, the Mexicans had a sport called bull tailing. And tailing is actually the forerunner of steer wrestling in rodeos. So you learn stuff like this, though, and you go, oh, wow, who knew?
Yeah.
But it's what keeps, so, okay, I got to work that into books somewhere, right? So it keeps it going. And that then can often lead to other situations.
Any questions? I'd like to kind of throw this over. Yeah.
I sort of came because I was interested in your angel investing business. Which, I mean, I just wondered, you said you looked at companies that qualified. What does that mean, companies that qualified?
We had about 20 elements that they had to meet.
What were the most important ones? I'm just interested in what you were looking for. Because there's no cash flow after all, right?
Yeah. One is certainly on the part of the entrepreneur is what kind of support have they surrounded themselves with? Are they willing to learn? A lot of people have great products. A lot of people have a vision and passion and that kind of stuff, and that's great. But you got to have a good team, and that's one of the most important things. One of the big failures that we see or saw repeatedly was failure to do market research. You didn't have any idea who was going to buy their product and how much they'd pay. You probably know Vaughn Thurman. Oh, well, he's a successful entrepreneur. He's got an outfit called High Gear here locally. And, I helped him out when he was early on. And he has a great software product for offices. And he had priced it wrong. That's another issue. He had a competitor out there that was an inferior product that was charging 10 grand subscription. And Vaughn, he's mentioned this to groups, it's no secret. He was charging half as much and he wasn't selling and he had a better product. So I said, Vaughn, crank it up to about 9K. Well, he went wild. It was perceived value. So sometimes it's as simple as that, but is the entrepreneur open to those kind of thinkings? And the other thing is unrealistic expectations. We had this thing in the trade called the hockey stick financial, where they plug along and all of a sudden they're going to take off. It ain't going to happen. So we had a lot of criteria we went by. Looking for a plan was really important. Did they really know where they're headed? Could they articulate their vision and mission? Did they have a set of core values that were embedded in the business that would guide them? I mean, if you go up the street to Yakabad, Scott Reiser's outfit, and you go in the lobby of his office, he's got his core values in neon lights, literally, on the wall in the lobby. And that's what the company lives by. You want that kind of stability in their direction. So we had a ton, and we rated them. Actually, I borrowed an assessment sheet that's used at the Dingman Center for Entrepreneurship down at University of Maryland. I had a sheet that I used for front-end assessment, but when we actually would listen to pitches, we had a sheet that was very similar or parallel to that.
Can we get that? Can we get,
Oh, it cost you $1 gazillion.
Can we get that?
Yeah, sure.
Sure, this group? I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been in a couple of their angel investor pitches,
Right,
and I've seen that sheet.
yeah.
And it's quite interesting because one that is the highest is exit strategy.
How's the investor can get his money back? It's not a loan.
No, it's not alone, but it's one of the high. What they do basically is they give it a number, and then they multiply that number by that. But it's exit strategy.
Right.
They know where they're going to be for. It doesn't mean they're out of the business, but do they have a plan where they're going to be in 5 years, 6 years?
How are you going to return that investment?
Yeah, and I looked at that. I'm not ready to exit. I mean, I don't know what that means, but it's an interesting thing because people think it's money in the bank. They think it's whatever, but it's a lot of these intangibles, like Mark was saying, that the business plan. And one thing about the business plan is just a couple.
It's a roadmap.
It's a roadmap, and it's flexible, and it's strategic, not just tactics. It's strategy, what ifs, whatever. And these are the things that they look at. And when they make the pitches, if I can, is that they look for these entrepreneurs making the pitch to really highlight those factors.
When I did my first business plan, I was working for a company with 6,000 employees. I had to gather 150 third tier executives for input into the strategic plan and get all their input. We used a modified Delphi technique, but man, to get their participation, it was like incredible. It was wonderful. But the result of it is this is a company that went from $230 million revenue. 2 years later, they're doing 350. Gee, why was that? But that was my second plan, actually. The first one, it was with a division of a company that said, hey, we need a plan. I said, sure, I'll try to help you. And they were at 5 million, and 3.5 years later, they were at 55 million.
And what did
They followed the plan that they helped develop. I mean, I was just the guided it.
How did they help?
So you have to have buy-in.
How did they help develop it?
Oh.
I mean, not to a great extent, but their involvement, did they review it, did they critique it?
It's less their input. When you use Delphi, basically you're taking a whole bunch of ideas and you're putting them on papers, you're papering a wall with them, and then you start voting. I say, which are the most viable ideas? So it has to be stuff that's achievable. What's really interesting is we'd come up with the results of the plan and these reviews, and there'd still be department heads who would resist it, and they'd go fund an effort out of their department budgets, and they'd still fail. So the system really worked, and having a plan was just absolutely essential. When people would come to me, and you shake your head, and you got these online plans. You're all familiar with Gigo, garbage in, garbage out, and that's a lot of times what you'd wind up with. And these plans also work for nonprofits. I worked with American Marketing Association. I headed up. Now they call them chairman. Back then it was president of Montgomery County Chamber in Maryland. We did a strategic business plan. The chamber tripled membership in a 2-year period. They were afraid to go and approach Marriott Corporation, for example. And so we developed a strategy and a structure to go after the big companies. I was involved with another nonprofit. It was treatment and learning centers. They dealt with people with educational challenges. And, we developed a plan there. And again, all of a sudden, just because they're nonprofit doesn't mean they can't make money, and they got to think like a money-making operation to be successful. It's the same principles apply, and they apply for books. And of course, I was looking at a guy who had $1 million in the bank, and I'm saying, "Don't let it sit there. Let's use this to increase your sales." It was like he's almost afraid of success.
It's hard to make that leap. It's hard to make
Oh.
that leap. Like, I'm going to have this payroll and, and I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
It's the hardest thing that I'm finding.
Oh, yeah.
Starting that.
I'm one step ahead of you, and I'm doing it here on now, and for me, it kind of was a risk,
Yeah.
but it was a calculated risk, and
Yeah.
it's already paying off. Already. And so, you gotta be cognizant about what you're doing, for sure.
Yeah.
But if you're sort of thinking this is the right step, but
Mhm.
that isn't the way,
Yeah.
at least, yeah, like maybe sometimes.
And you need good advisors beyond your immediate staff. When you get to the point, I guard against, Joe's out of the room, okay, I guard against hiring attorneys too early because they're expensive. And you don't necessarily need them except, hey, I got to put a contract together, okay. So you don't need somebody on retainer, for example. But you probably want somebody who understands accounting, and maybe, and business accounting specifically, that can understand the old vagaries of balance sheets and P&Ls and things like that. Even though you may know, it's having that other set of eyes that can, for example, do an audit and know all the tax advantages and things like that you can take advantage of.
So one thing that in my own career is that we did stuff on developing organizations, is that they would make hires based on the resume. You know, how well a person looked on the piece of paper. Look at the degrees, look where they went to school, look what they're doing. So what we did at Sterling Institute was that we had another selection, is identifying what type of person is it that is going to be successful in your business. And you write out those characteristics, those values, who they are. And you kind of look for those through the interviewing process and the understanding process versus, wow, look at this. This person got a 3.2 average. This one got a 2.7, so I'm gonna get the one with the 3 point. But boy, that selection process means you got to sit down and identify what is it going to be that's going to be successful in your business.
You don't want to be 2 years down the road and say, "Oh, I blew that hire."
Yeah, but they look good on paper. That's why people spend a lot of time and money and effort on these resumes. They look great, and then all of a sudden somebody walks in with doesn't quite look as well, but that person might be the right person. So it's called interviewing and selection, and that selection process is many times not looked at. Yeah. It's the paper that's looked at. Anything else for Mark on that part before we move on?
Mark, how do you get an entrepreneur who's that longhorn, he's just taking off, right? And you just know they're taking off, but they need that help, and you got to be that cowboy chasing after them.
That's great frustration.
How do you become that cowboy chasing after them, make them
Sometimes they need a hard dose of reality.
right?
There's one local I won't mention, but he was going to pay off investors in Bitcoin. Like, cut me some slack here. Excuse me? No.
Should have taken it. Should have taken it.
No. It's not fun. You look for fungibility. And that's not the case with the cyber currency. Investing in the blockchain underneath, hey, cool. In my humble estimation.
Investing in the what?
The blockchain technology that's undergirds it.
Oh, okay. Well,
How do you get an entrepreneur to there say, you've got somebody just taking off and they're seeing green pastures, all of that, but you just know that sales aren't going to meet up with product, or product isn't going to meet up with sales, but you've got to yank it back a little bit.
Short of slapping them up the side of the head, yeah. It's when you have a set down, a reality check, and you say, look, we got to talk about this. If they're resisting putting the team together still, that kind of thing, there's just, I've had at least a couple entrepreneurs who have come after me looking for help, and their ego is so big they probably couldn't fit through the door to this building. Just arrogance, thinking too much of themselves. You have to have a bit of a service nature to be willing to open up to other people, other ideas for your business. You've got to be constantly looking for new ways. What's happening in your business today? Everything's so fast. You got to be on top of what's happening. And if somebody is just wed to this single idea that they have, and you can't, if sitting down with them, and maybe you got to bring in another party. Sometimes familiarity breeds contempt. The expert from afar, and bring somebody in who's an expert in a particular technology or business area, and let them hear it from somebody else. But of course, each case is special, individual to the environment. But yeah, it's very frustrating. And then they'll shake their heads and go, yeah, okay, I hear you, I understand, and they're not listening.
Well, a lot of people do this.
And that's when you walk away.
Yeah.
That was the problem solved whenever one of the criteria was they have to be teachable, right?
Oh yeah.
And if they're not teachable and they're not going to listen, part ways.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the team. Identify the team members that typical business owner will need, and then when most entrepreneurs are trying something, they have a limited budget. So what members of your team do you contract with, or talk around?
Okay, most of the businesses I worked with were tech businesses, tech-based. So it's a special breed. I didn't deal with restaurants and other stuff. And first you got your founder. A lot of times it's more than a single founder, though. A lot of times you have a team of guys, couple people. But you got some essential aspects. You got to worry about, and sometimes you don't want to. You can't afford to hire that full staff. So that's why you'll contract a financial service. You'll contract you're a long way from having in-house counsel. You may contract your sales and marketing, put them on commission. Things to avoid having payroll and a sunk burn rate. And so you're worried about, once you got a plan, then you need to implement the plan. Well, as CEO, you're going to be involved in business transactions at that executive level. Well, who's doing the day-to-day operations? Well,
CEO.
a typical entrepreneur is probably looking at 80, 90, 100-hour work weeks, right? And well, I worry about, back to Deepak's point, I worry about the person that says, 40 hours, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've heard some, there's great stories out there. There's a guy, he lives in Cleveland now, but he was in Northern Virginia, a guy named Mario Marino. He had a software company. And I mean, he spent one New Year's Eve in a high rise in Boston installing his software in this building. He ultimately sold his company to Computer Associates and personally pocketed $600 million. Now, he's a really super nice guy, and he gave back to the community for several years before he moved back to Cleveland. But, I mean, dedication. I mean, he put hours in. He's lucky. Lucky he didn't lose his family, and that's another thing, is work-life balance. I knew a guy who had a wonderful security product that he was trying to sell to law enforcement. And he got investors. He got over $1 million invested. And you know what he did? He went out and bought a Maserati and got a beautiful home in Great Falls. This was about 10 years ago, so it's affordable. And before you know it, he wasn't making sales. He lost the car, he lost the house, he lost the wife. And business.
And the Maserati.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing.
So, you got on the one hand somebody who busts their butt in the right ways. It's about service and meeting the client need at all costs. You're not prostrating yourself to the client at all. You're adding value.
Yeah. Next question. I don't have my watch, and I forgot my watch. What time is it?
It's 10:30.
Okay.
7:30.
7:30. Where time goes by fast when you're having a good time. One of the things that we talked about too, Mark, was evaluating cost and value versus your product and services. How do you evaluate the cost and the value and then the price of that? What's the criteria you use to know that you're pricing it right and it's costed right?
This gets back to market research. You gotta ask your market, what are they willing to pay for this product or service? It's that simple. Put together focus groups, surveys, whatever it takes. You can get a certain amount of stuff online, but there's nothing like you personally getting involved and figure out. I mean, in the case of publishing, I'm kind of stuck with the publisher says this is what people are charging for books and audio and ebook and stuff like that. Oh, okay. The only slack I have is negotiating royalty. But for the normal business, it is the thing why entrepreneurs are afraid to ask clients what they want and what value they see in it, and are they willing to actually pay for it, is beyond me. How do you go in so blind and spend all that time, all that effort, all that money, and not be sure that it's going to have market acceptance?
Yep.
Horrors.
I think the perception there is that whoever starts that business also thinks they're a product manager, but they're not.
Yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Right? You can surround yourself with a great CFO and a great product manager, you'll be successful.
That's by the time they get to the venture capital round, their history. They got golden handcuffs or something, and yeah.
So maybe stretching the analogies to the point of breaking, right?
Okay, do that, Seth.
But so I'm sitting here sort of thinking about it, right? So you have a particular niche in the way that you write.
Yeah.
You know, a sort of
Right.
view approach to the Western genre.
Yep.
Like that, right? And you, I suppose, wanted that sort of story out there. You really didn't have that kind of story out there, right? And you said, I'm gonna write it because I wanna see it, right? And so that's great, you're fulfilling a need, right? But, right, there's two reasons that it could be, maybe it's a novel idea, nobody's, or it could be that really nobody wants that, right?
Oh, I checked it out. I mean, no.
So I was curious about that. I mean, how did you sort of validate that?
I began to see that in other genre,
Okay,
and that's an indicator.
okay.
Yeah. And it just I've read a lot of. I mean, I'm up to here in Louis L'Amour and William Johnstone and Janet Daly and Larry McMurtry, you name it. And you read all these different authors and their styles. And then you venture into other stuff. Like I'm a big fan of Thomas Wolfe, Bonfire of the Vanities, Man in Full, stuff like that. So you're William Faulkner's another, fabulous American artist, writer. And you're picking up different styles and things. And these are the styles that are working. What is it about Tom Clancy's that works? What about John Grisham? What works? And Grisham actually uses a little bit of POV technique. And they really lend themselves to making movies and series.
That's where the money's at, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's got to be over there. Yeah, do it.
Well, you get somebody, I was telling Joe, you get somebody like Janet Daly who writes Western romance. The guys on the front cover stripped to the waist with the rippling abs. And she has sold 32 million copies of her books in 19 countries. And they're all Western genre. And the women love them.
The biggest resurrection of Western genre was written in 1973 Westworld. Crichton wrote
There
it.
you go. Westworld, yeah, that was
Crichton
different.
was the Jobs of Western genre. The guy was writing Jurassic Park and Westworld in 1973.
There you go.
And Westworld was the hottest show in HBO last year.
And it's interesting, as businesses and books get successful, for example, you say Bill Gates, everybody knows who Bill Gates is, right? You say J.R. Tolkien, well, everybody knows who J.R. Tolkien is. Hello. Because they eventually attain that pinnacle of success. And it took them a long time. It didn't happen to snap the fingers overnight. Zane Grey was the first of the famous Western novelists, okay? And, his first book was back in 1929. So, the thing is, there's a lot of dead Western writers. But there's also, there's things, and I should add this, as an entrepreneur, this is important, you need to network. You need to be involved with other people in your community. For example, if I'm in Frederick and I have an IT business, I need to network with Tech Frederick. And the same goes, in my art, I'm I'm involved with the Western Writers of America. I'm also, by the way, a poet. I've got a bunch of poems that have been published. And I'm a member of the Poetry Society of Texas and the Pennsylvania Poetry Society. And I appear at different poetry gatherings. But anyway, so, you know, but you get yourself immersed and involved with other writers. Tomorrow night, I'm going to a local library that once a month has a bunch of authors that get together and they talk about their craft. And it's just, again, making connections. And you want to do that as an entrepreneur in your field.
How do you, everybody goes networking. Who doesn't go networking in here? I think we all go networking. When you go networking, what do you know?
Do you know how to network? Is that the question?
Well, let me get to it here. So the question is, how do you network?
If I come into a room with, say, 50 people to network, I feel on top of the world if I can engage 2, maximum 3 people and come away with a couple of business cards that might mean something downstream. A lot of people go in and they go, oh no! And they're overwhelmed.
Either that they walk in with 40 or 50 cards that they walk out with those. They felt it's successful that they got rid of all the 40 or 50 cards, I think. But if you got rid of 2 or 3.
You want meaningful connections. If you're not getting a meaningful connection, you might be in the wrong place. How many of you have an elevator speech? You all know what it is. 30 seconds on what your business is about. It's a concise description, soup to nut. Who you are, what you do, why you do it. And most people forget the closer, which is, hey, if you're up for it, let's get together.
Yeah.
You need an action, a call for action. I used to see this a lot in advertising, both in any media really, where there's never a, hey, call us today, call us now. An immediacy, like that call to action. You got to be willing to put yourself out and take a little risk. And if you're literally on an elevator and somebody's asked you, what do you do? And you give them that quick pitch about your business. And what do you got to lose? Hey, you like what you hear? Let's get together and talk about it. And you exchange cards.
Yeah.
Or what's the worst that can happen? Oh, that's nice, and the guy leaves. So what? What do you gain? What do you lost? Not much.
And the other thing too, I think, is that when you're networking, is the ability, if you find yourself talking more versus listening. You know, some people they're just love to talk, but the listening is really where you really build the relationship, and you start to see that. So do you listen?
What?
It's okay, right? I'm saying. One of the things is, how do you create a lasting value in an entrepreneurial business? It's lasting. You know, people like it, they see it, they feel it, but then it's there for a minute, and then it doesn't last. How do you create lasting value?
Boy, you know, it is a great question. I'm not just saying that.
I know it is.
Every person that has so far that's put a review up has said they're looking forward to the next. And you go, aha. There, you know, and of course the publisher's going, oh. Libraries want to see that. Bookstores want to see that. And so in the case of a book, it's pretty straightforward. If you've written a good book, people are going to be looking for more from you. In the case of an entrepreneurial business, you want to find ways to lock them in as a customer. It might be additional capabilities that you upsell, right? How do you establish and sustain that relationship? And that's a strategy depending on the particular business you're in. I mean, you know, gonna vary from certainly business to business. it might be that you're providing software for a client, and it's a third-party software, and your job is to keep it upgraded for the client. Well, boy, you're sustained. As long as they're depending on you for the upgrades, you're cool. And that's the kind of, that's just kind of, typical of the kind of thing you want to set up. Or, of course, we see it all the time, and whether it's Apple or Microsoft, we got, 3.4 is coming down the road. Hold out for 5G, it's.
But it's also a relationship too.
Oh, yeah.
It's just not products and services.
You have a little CM, customer management, becomes an important role. Initially, the CEO's doing that, but eventually you like to have somebody full-time. And it's not necessarily a salesperson. And in fact, every person that you have that interacts with your customer is a salesperson.
Yep.
They don't like to be called salespeople, so you don't call them that. But they are. They're representing you to the client and your product. And they have an opportunity to perceive things that the client needs. And so the CEO or management team that fails to interact with their tech support or configuration management or sales team that's out there, and they don't connect and pick up on these things, are really sandbagging themselves.
Yeah. And that, a very important person to me is the gatekeeper. Letting them see that they're important. They're not just there to make sure you get to the right person. But one thing I've learned through my career is that that person that's at that front desk or wherever he or she is at, they're important. And they got to they just say good morning to them, say hello to them, engage them.
Here's an example. When I was in a corporate world, and I was a junior executive, and I was, in addition to strategic planning, I was doing a bunch of other stuff, some marketing, communications, public affairs. Oh, I would love it. I get to go down to Capitol Hill and have fun with congressmen. But I could get things done in that company that other executives senior to me were pulling their hair out trying to get done, like getting something physically moved from point A to point B. And if they finally figured out how I was doing it, every once in a while I'd go down on the loading dock or to the maintenance folks, and we'd chat, got to be friends, get to know them, and they get to know me, and they're willing to, I'll scratch your back, you'll scratch mine, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And boy, they'll follow backwards to help. But you dare not put yourself in some ivory tower. I worked for a CEO of one company that he had an ugly tie collection. In his office, he had a tie rack, and it honestly had some of the ugliest ties you'd ever seen in your life.
Did he know they were ugly?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, that's good.
And if he had a habit a few times a week of strolling the halls of the headquarters building, and you had maybe 1,500 employees there, and you had guys in suit and tie and stuff like that. Now, if you met him in the hall and he looked at you and say, "Man, nice tie. Can I have that when you're done?" You had an ugly tie.
Did you get that asked a lot of you?
No.
Oh, okay. Or sort of make sure that. One thing that I just thinking about what you were saying, Mark, is that I think in any type of sales and marketing situation, is that as we're out there selling, marketing, no matter who they are, there's to me there are three basic buying points. There's the economic buyer. That's the person that controls the money. He or she is going to sign the check. Sometimes they don't care what the hell you do, what you do and how you do it, but they're the ones that are going to have to sign the check.
Yep.
And you got to get to them. And you got to market to them differently. You got to sell to them. There is the feasibility buyer. That's the one that says, you know what you got? It's really good. I love it. Let's do it. And all of a sudden, you two are having a tremendous conversation. You say, come on, you want it, don't you? And they go, yeah, but I ain't got the money. What the hell did
Oh,
I
yeah.
do with this person for this time? So you have to kind of market it. And then you also have the implementer. That's the one that says no matter what you do, whatever, they're the ones responsible for implementing what you market them. And when in my career, I have lost a lot of business because I forgot. What do you think? I got that economic buyer because hey, it's mono, whatever you want to call it. Feasibility buyer, we're all yeah. But then that implementer is the one that says whatever you're doing, you know, if it's training and development, what we were doing, they're responsible for putting that on. I forgot about them. All of a sudden they find that you're about to implement something in their sandbox maybe, and they can really mess you up. So, you know, getting back to this, you know, creating these relationships, you really need to kind of involve yourself with all these different types of people. Even the small businesses, you know, even though they're small, you might have 2 or 3 people. Oh, yeah, but they're just tech. They're just over there at the typewriter. They're just over there. Get to know them. I'm sure you, but this is just something that you kind of find out as you look back as why it didn't work, you know? So we got a couple more questions, then we want to take a little break and then have a little closure here. You got something to add?
A dirty little secret.
Dirty?
Well, not dirty.
Keep it clean.
So one of my little side, you know, I've got this, I want to get this historical novel. I also have a biography I've written of my great-great-grandfather, who was an immigrant from Texas, from Ireland to Texas in 1850, and his story, building a ranch and all that kind of stuff. And it's a great exercise. But I was elected to a school board up in Pennsylvania. I sat on that sucker for a bit, got to be president of the school board. And I got to Adams County, Fairfield. I got to review the proposed curriculum. I was the only one of 9 school board members that actually read the curriculum. No parent names were signed up to review the curriculum. No, Pennsylvania, Adams County, an Adams County district. There was no, emphasize, no history in that curriculum. Anywhere. Well, there was a study of the Constitution, but they had a little sentence in there that kind of threw me off. They had the Establishment Clause, and they defined it as the Establishment Clause established religion. And I told the superintendent, I said, this ain't gonna fly. So we had a lot of revisions to the curriculum based mostly on my comment and finally cajoling a couple board members to actually finally look at it. But it struck me increasingly that I heard from other educators that history wasn't happening. So I have a little side mission in my writing to deliver a segment, a piece of history. And so that's just throwing that out there. I do have a somewhat creative.
My last couple questions for you.
Yes, sir.
Is as entrepreneurs out here, because you also been knowing you, Mark, at least with me, you tell it like it is. And what are the realities of being an entrepreneur, running a small business? What are the real world things? The good, the bad, and the ugly. How many remember that movie?
Oh, Clint, yeah.
Yeah. Those that are younger, you say that to the younger people, that the good, the bad, the ugly, they look at you like, where's that come from?
You're showing your age.
Well, yeah, I do that pretty easy, but it's true. But really, what would you close with here, Mark, as far as the good, the bad, the ugly of I know writing the business plan is very important, because you've been telling me that a long time.
You gotta have guts.
I'm sorry?
You gotta have guts. Be brave. Grit. Grit is good. That's the title of the fifth book, is Oasis Grit. Um, but really, grit, guts. You got to have a, and the thing is, you've got to sustain it over time. I've got things that are in the hopper that I can't mention because they told me I can't. That will have a tendency early next year to potentially really send my books sky high. We'll see. But you work for those kind of things. You get to do some really cool stuff. And Xavier, and your transition thing, you probably appreciate. I got a cousin who operates a ranch in South Texas. He raises cattle. Been at it for a long time. Ranch has been in the family for 152 years. But he does he's a former serviceman, and he does a hunt every year, a deer hunt on his property for wounded warriors. And it's a small thing. He gets maybe a dozen, and these are guys who are pretty rough shape, burns, amputees, stuff like that. So I'm hopefully going down there. I'm going to give him a bunch of books, But he's been doing it for a couple of years now. Who knows? I might get me a deer. But you get in there you're able to give, if you will, and having that as part of your business thinking. There's so many worthy business models out there. Having that element of your business where you're giving back in some way, shape, or form in a meaningful way, its value is tremendous. It's part of a service or servant mentality. So I'd say guts, grit, and servant leadership. You probably learned that at where. So, it's really bottom line where it's at.
Anything like how you deal with things don't go well. If you fail, it doesn't work.
There's one constant:
Yeah.
change. Can you adapt? If something isn't going well, why isn't it going well? You got to figure that out. Get whatever help you need to find out, but
Is change. Adapt.
adapt.
Good.
Sometimes you got to take a hard turn.
Before Mark, any other questions for Mark? Yeah, Danica.
Yeah. You're obviously really very seasoned and experienced. So,
Wait, is this ageist comment?
I took it as an age comment, Danica.
it's really not.
I did. I'm just personally.
But it was,
I've been at it a long time. You're cool.
what do you wish that the new generation of entrepreneurs knew going into this?
I think, and as another thing of my involvement, I should also say that we homeschooled our kids, and they've done very well by it. I'm scared to death. I'm sorry for those parents who had kids in the public schools, but I feel for you. It's a scary prospect. They're not teaching them all of the skills they need to survive in the world. Not enough kids are coming out understanding that, hey, I'm going to go to work for somebody, and they're a business, and they have a P&L and a balance sheet, and stuff like that, and they got to make plans and projections and sell product and develop product and stuff like that. One of my sons has a job as a software developer, and his employer, he's been at it a year and a half since he's graduated. His employer is constantly giving him new responsibilities, and I look at it and I go, been there, done that. They're grooming, because he's got this sense of responsibility and get it done. And if you can instill that, we're not doing enough to instill that in kids.
Would you say it's a zoo animal mentality, like you gotta protect them? And, because I see that, like, I see it sometimes, people I know that are around my age group, and I saw a complaint, I heard about a complaint, like, oh, they're 24 years old, mom didn't get me up for work.
Oh, boy.
So, you're
Hey,
speaking the truth
a
right
great moment is when your kids are old enough that they trash their soccer participation trophies.
But as a young entrepreneur, as a young person starting the entrepreneurial business, I guess I just trying to understand.
You got to learn. You got to have your ears open.
Just keep on learning
You keep on learning. Keep on learning.
and get rid of all your trophies.
Yeah.
All one of them, huh?
All the participation trophies.
Okay.
You know, it is kind of interesting. I have a younger brother who was a bodybuilder, and he was a 1990 Mr. America Pairs, and he's got 2 trophies. His Mr. Los Angeles trophy, 3, Mr. Los Angeles trophy, his America trophy, and he finished 5th in Bologna, Italy, at the Universe. You know, and that's it. And he that's nothing else of his rewards mattered. That was kind of, pinnacle stuff. But I see that and I go, trophy. We got to be careful. You never want to be wed and measured by your trophies. What are they gonna put in your obit when you're gone? What is the difference you made in the world you lived in? I read a book recently called The Pendulum by Williams and Drew. And they had history in 40-year cycles, effectively 80. And these guys were college professors, and they tracked history back in these cycles for centuries. And it was a we thinking versus me thinking. And for example, in World War II, we had a period of me thinking. Patriotism was off the charts. 40 years later, by 1980, it was hippy dippy guys, and it was all about we, and we're all cool, and but then the cycle shifts, and it's fascinating thinking. Right now, according to their theory, we're in the nascent swing of the pendulum, and we're moving from a we thinking back to a me thinking. And the outcome of that from a marketing standpoint is you want to use pull strategy as opposed to push. Just saying.
Good. Well, Mark, thank you very much. And
Thank you, Jerry.